I love studying the scriptures, but sometimes I get stuck. I ask my kids, hey, where should we go with this? Or when we're doing gospel study as a family, maybe we should kind of just flounder over here. Sometimes I get stuck, and whether it's hard to understand language or I just can't see how it might apply to my life, Claude has become my go-to scripture study companion. I use chat for this sometimes, but Claude seems to be a little bit more lyrical in its understanding. In this video, I'm going to show you exactly how I use Claude to go deeper and feel a little more connected. Now, I'm not saying that AI is the way you're going to get closer to the Lord. Like, that's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is AI can actually help you organize things into themes, like the topics, the chapters that you might be researching, maybe even the denominational processes that you might need to go through. There's a lot of great resources out there for any type of religion. My specific religion, my denomination, has an entire national, international website that has all of their handbooks, study options, study resources, scriptures, videos, all the way from the past and present leadership, as well as seminaries and other things included that I can actually have chat reference, or that it can just tell me, hey, go and look this up. This actually relates to the topic that you're talking about. I love that. And I think what it does is it helps me kind of say, yeah, no, I don't want to talk about faith today, but I do want to talk about what it means to apply faith. So I'm not talking about the theory of faith, more about the application of faith. And having that discussion inside of your AI assistant might help you lean a little bit towards a more checkbox style of studying so that you can get deeper into the studying that you need to do. I used to just think that all I had to do to study was read. But as I'm realizing, laying there on my phone, reading isn't helping me absorb the things I need to absorb for scripture study or gospel related study. So I thought, well, maybe other people are having the same questions I was having. And so we're just going to talk about this a little bit. I'm going to show you how I use Claude to go deeper and feel more connected. Also, to make sure that I have a plan in place. I don't like checkboxes when I'm talking about spiritual things, but for me, I have this dopamine need, this actual need to hit dopamine. And when I hit a checkbox, it makes me do things better. And I recognize this. I'm okay with this. So in order for me to feel more successful with my scripture study or my gospel study, I do need to have a checklist where I can check mark something off. So if you have used any apps or anything where you're reading and maybe you're studying in the book of Genesis and you click off, yeah, I read this chapter, and it gives you a nice green, woohoo, yes, I read this, then you'll know what I'm talking about. It makes you feel like you're accomplishing something. And I need that in all aspects of my life. So what we're going to actually do is I'm actually going to take you into Claude. How I usually read is I'll read an entire chapter. Okay. This is how I normally do it when I'm talking about with a scripture passage. Okay. So I'm actually going to go into Luke 14. This is chapter 14 in the New Testament, and I use the King James Version, and I'm going to go down to number 2 of that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into Claude, and I'm starting a brand new conversation. It says, "Happy Thursday, Bonnie." Claude's very friendly. Okay. And I'm going to say, "Help me understand," and I am doing Luke 14:2. Okay. Break it down simply and tell me what it means. I'm also going to say, "Can you please help me understand?" Remember, I do everything with please and thank you. Okay. So I'm actually going to start my conversation off with, "Can you please help me understand Luke 14:2, not Luke 12:2, which it says, Luke 14:2 is, "And behold, there was a certain man before him which had the dropsy." Okay. And so chat really does come into this with an empathetic and sympathetic mentality as he's chatting. And it's a lot more involved than just something I might get from chat. Chat does a great job. Claude is a little bit more in depth, okay? And he says, "I'd be happy to help you understand Luke 14:2. Let me break it down simply for you." And then he does what it reads. Now, he did do the NIV option, and I'm going to actually say, can you please redo this and reference the King James Version. Okay, so I'm going to have him redo it because so I like the King James Version just because I like the way it reads, and I do believe that it is very accurate. It hasn't been put into all of these different, more modern terms, which, as we know, things can get lost in translation. So what I want him to do is I'm doing this, and he's redoing it for me. He says, "I'd be happy to help you understand it in the King James Version." And so he says, "And behold, there was a certain man before him which had the dropsy." Great, which is exactly what I just read. He said, breaking this down simply, he says, "And behold," this is a phrase that draws attention to something important about to happen. Awesome. There was a certain man before him. Jesus was in the presence of a particular man. This took place when Jesus went to eat at the house of one of the chief Pharisees on the Sabbath day, as mentioned in verse 1, which had the dropsy. This man suffered from a condition called dropsy, which is an old medical term for edema or abnormal swelling due to fluid retention in the body's tissues. That makes me feel sad because I have had edema when I was pregnant and that sucks, but I did not know what dropsy was. So this helps me a lot. In context, this verse is setting the stage for what happens next. Jesus heals this man on the Sabbath, then uses this situation to teach the Pharisees about compassion and whether it's lawful to heal on the Sabbath day, challenging their rigid interpretation of religious laws. The verse itself is brief but important as it introduces the person who becomes central to Jesus' teaching moment in this passage. And then it says, would you like me to explain more about the surrounding context and what happens next in this story? I don't need him to go any further. I just needed him to explain that one verse. So just the verse planning itself helped me break down, oh yeah, you put it in simple terms. I now understand what dropsy means, and I understand what the context around this verse actually is. Then what I'm going to ask next is, remember, I want it to help me take it further. So I'm just covering a verse. I'm not covering a whole chapter, which you can do like a couple of verses. It's a couple of chapters. You can have it break it down. But for this next one, I'm going to say, how can I apply this scripture to my life right now? Now, if I'm a mom, I might say, how can I apply this to my mothering capabilities? What can I do to make me be a better mom from this scripture? So what I'm actually going to do is I want to say, how can I apply this scripture to my life right now? Remember, I have all of the prompts for these options down in the description below, but if you want to have this entire conversation accessible to you, you can go and check it out on the blog post that's linked down below, and it will have everything that I'm inputting as well as everything that Claude is outputting so that you can see what the dynamic would look like, okay? It says, thank you for asking how to apply Luke 14:2 in your life. While the single verse alone is brief, simply describing a man with dropsy in Jesus' presence, it's most meaningful when considered within its context in Luke 14:1-6. So right there, it tells me this is one small piece of a bigger puzzle, which is 1-6. So I might go and read the whole thing. And so now here's how he's going to tell me this is how you're going to apply this as a broader lesson to your life today. Look for opportunities to show compassion, question rigid rules that prevent doing good, act with courage, remember that people matter more than protocols, and see interruptions as opportunities. This is so terrific. Now, if I wanted to take this further, I could say, hey, I am in this denomination. I belong to this church. I go to this church. Could you please utilize, inferences from this church? And so you can actually make it even more tied into your denomination and the teachings from it. So like a Catholic might have a different understanding and application of this verse, this collection of verses than say a Pentecostal. Okay, now I'm going to actually use Claude for a deeper cross-reference or study to actually take this selection of verses in. And I'm going to say, thank you. Can you please give me 3 other scriptures that relate to this one? Okay, and remember, I'm constantly coming back to what it is that I asked him to reference. So here he is. He's like, oh, here are 3 more that connect with Luke 14:2 and its surrounding context. So Claude really wants me to stick with 1-6 because it's a broader lesson, but he did say, here you go. So Mark 3:1-5, Matthew 12:11-12, and James 2:15-17. So if I was like, hey, I need to teach a lesson and I'm going to actually talk about this verse, this could actually help me expand on in a better way how I might help other people connect with maybe this verse, this scripture, or the context around it, as well as the message that is inside of those scriptures. Okay. And and how it parallels, like this is really great. Thank you so much. Okay. Now we're going to actually see how can I apply this? Okay. So I'm going to actually put in here, thank you so much. Can you please help me turn my thoughts about the scripture into a short journal entry? I don't love this, but I'm going to say with a prompt I could use to help me write. I don't want it to write the journaling itself. I need to be connected. Remember, we don't want to replace ourselves in this whole AI situation, okay? What we want to do is ask for prompts and tools to help us get closer to the Lord in this specific example, okay, in the specific video and post that we're doing. So for instance, it says, I'm happy to help you create a journal entry. So he's like, hey, here's a journal prompt, seeing beyond rules to people in need. Reflect on a time when you noticed someone in need, just as Jesus noticed the man with dropsy. Were there any rules or barriers that might have prevented you from helping? And then he gives you a sample for a journal entry. Might be how this looked. Question for tomorrow. What rules in my life might be preventing me from showing compassion to others? So he is helping with this is what you might use for your prompt, and this is what your journal situation might look like, okay? I love this. Add a question for the next day. That's super important, okay? Now, another thing you might do is you might take it and say, hey, can you explain this verse to a 6-year-old in a way that helps them feel loved by God? There's a lot of things that you can do for family devotionals, bedtime talks, explaining a scripture story or a parable that maybe you're having a hard time understanding. I think employing AI as a tool to help you get closer to God is a great way for you to utilize the ethical boundaries that are inside of it, right? Like you don't want to go to AI and be like, tell me what your belief is on this, right? Tell me what you believe about Jesus. We can't say that it has any ideas of about religious applications personally, like because it's AI, right? It has the theories, it has access to all of the information out there about the religions itself, histories, applications, theories. But to really understand a spiritual journey, you have to have a soul, and it has to be the person doing that spiritual journey. So I tell this to my kids all the time. You can borrow my testimony, you can learn from me, but when it comes down to your relationship with Jesus or, your own form of God, whoever you might be, it's something that you have to discover on your own. I'll give you guidelines. I'll tell you where I'm at with mine, but it's only right for you if it's applied personally and for you. So don't sit there and treat AI like it's your deity, okay? You're using it as a tool to help you get closer to your form of personal progression and spiritual enlightenment, okay? So I hope this helped you, but this is how I would do this. And I'll have this entire prompt and the output and input over on my blog post linked down below. If you have any questions or comments, or you'd like other GPT advice or prompts, questions, anything like that you would like, please put them in the comments below and hit like or subscribe. And I cannot wait to see what you're using AI for to help in your real life circumstances.